RPG games exist for one reason: to make you feel like you're actually living inside another world. They let you create your own character, make your own choices, and build your own story. And honestly, that freedom is exactly why RPGs are one of the most loved genres in gaming. So in this video, we're checking out 18 incredible RPG games that every fan of the genre should know about. Grab your gear and let's jump in. I'm just gonna say it right now. New Vegas is one of the greatest RPGs ever made. You play as a courier in the Nevada wasteland who gets shot in the head and somehow survives. What starts as a revenge story quickly turns into getting dragged into a massive war between factions fighting for control of New Vegas. But the gameplay is where this game becomes special. You can build your character however you want. Want to be a sniper who talks his way out of problems? A melee maniac? A smooth-talking gambler? Go for it. The VATS system slows combat down and lets you strategically target body parts instead of relying purely on reflexes. Companions aren't just followers either. They have their own personalities, opinions, and story arcs that react to your choices. The world constantly responds to what you do, and that's why even today people still replay this game over and over again. When Yakuza switched from real-time action to turn-based combat, a lot of people thought, yeah, there's no way this is gonna work. And then the game came out and immediately proved everyone wrong. You play as Ichiban Kasuga, and his story is honestly one of the most emotional and entertaining in the series. The gameplay turns everyday jobs into combat classes. You can become a bodyguard, a breakdancer, a chef, or even a musician, and each class completely changes your abilities and combat style. Battles are way more dynamic than most turn-based games too. Characters move around the environment naturally, enemies interact with objects, and positioning actually matters. Then outside of combat, you've got mini-games, side quests, businesses to run, and random city events. Yokohama feels alive, and every corner feels like there's something weird or hilarious waiting for you. The Elder Scrolls Skyrim. Skyrim is one of those games that's somehow easy and impossible to explain at the same time. Easy because everyone knows it, hard because every player ends up with a completely different story. You start as the Dragonborn in the frozen lands of Skyrim, and after that the game basically says, go do whatever you want. Want to swing giant warhammers, become an assassin, master magic, steal every spoon in the kingdom? Somehow that's an option too. The gameplay progression is still one of my favorite RPG systems ever, because skills improve naturally as you use them. Sneak more? Sneaking improves. Cast spells? Magic gets stronger. The game never forces a class on you. Exploration is also insanely rewarding. You can walk toward a random cave marker and suddenly end up in a 2-hour adventure you never planned. And if the graphics feel dated, mods can make the game look almost unrecognizable. Gothic 2 does something modern RPGs rarely do. It doesn't care about your feelings. The second you enter the world, nobody treats you like a hero. Nobody tells you that you're special. If you walk into a dangerous area too early, enemies will absolutely destroy you. But that's exactly what makes the gameplay so satisfying. You start weak, like really weak. Even normal guards can beat you up. But slowly learning combat, getting stronger equipment, joining factions, and seeing yourself evolve feels incredibly rewarding. Every upgrade actually matters. Every new weapon changes your possibilities. The game respects the player's intelligence and never holds your hand, which gives progression a really satisfying payoff. Vampire the Masquerade, Bloodlines. This game had a rough launch. The studio shut down, the game was unfinished, and things looked bad. But thanks to community patches, people finally got to experience what this game was supposed to be. You wake up as a newly turned vampire in Los Angeles and immediately get pulled into a world of political manipulation, hidden societies, and supernatural conflict. Gameplay changes dramatically depending on your clan choice. Some vampires rely on stealth and manipulation, others become brutal monsters. And if you choose the Malkavian clan, you're basically playing an entirely different game because your character's insanity changes dialogue and interactions in ways that are honestly incredible. Feeding mechanics, persuasion systems, stealth gameplay, and vampire powers all come together to create something that still feels unique today. The atmosphere alone carries this game into legendary territory. Expedition 33. Every once in a while a game shows up out of nowhere and makes everyone ask the same question. Wait, where did this come from? That's exactly what happened with Clair Obscur Expedition 33. The world itself is already terrifying. Every year a mysterious paintress writes a number, and anyone who reaches that age simply disappears. So Gustav and his team set out on what could be their final journey to break the cycle once and for all. But gameplay is where this game really starts flexing. At first glance it looks like a classic turn-based RPG, but then suddenly you're actively dodging dodging attacks, timing perfect parries, and reacting in real time. Fights feel way more intense than you'd expect, because you're constantly involved instead of just selecting moves and watching animations. Then there's the Lumina system, which lets you mix abilities and create some pretty wild builds. One minute you're setting up huge combos, and the next you're accidentally creating a character that feels completely broken in the best way possible. For a studio's first major game, this level of quality is honestly kind of crazy. The Witcher 3: Wild Hunt. You know a game is special when the side quests are better than most games' main stories. You play as Geralt of Rivia, traveling through war-torn kingdoms while searching for Ciri, but let's be honest, almost nobody sticks to the main quest for very long. You start riding toward one objective, then suddenly you're hunting a cursed spirit in a haunted village 3 hours later. Monster contracts are where the gameplay really shines. You're not just walking in and swinging swords around. You investigate tracks, read about creatures, prepare oils and potions, then actually plan the fight. Every monster feels like its own puzzle. And then there's Gwent. Let's be real. Some people bought Witcher 3 and accidentally turned it into a full-time card game. Add the massive world, meaningful choices, and the Blood and Wine expansion that feels like a whole new RPG by itself, and you've got one of the easiest recommendations in gaming: Disco Elysium. Disco Elysium isn't really a normal RPG. Honestly, it feels more like somebody turned an incredible novel into a game. There are no giant boss fights, no flashy combat system, no swords flying everywhere. Instead, the real battlefield is inside your own head. You play as a detective who's completely lost his memory and somehow ended up being an absolute disaster of a human being. Your job is to solve a murder, but while doing that, you're also trying to figure out who you even are. The gameplay revolves around conversations and skill checks, but here's the twist: your skills literally talk to you. Logic argues with you. Empathy warns you about people. Authority tells you to act tougher, and sometimes half the voices in your head completely disagree with each other. It creates some of the weirdest, funniest, and most memorable dialogue in any RPG. Neverwinter Nights 2. If you're the type of player who spends 2 hours creating a character before actually starting the game, yeah, this one's dangerous. Neverwinter Nights 2 is basically a giant playground for RPG fans. Using Dungeons & Dragons rules, the game gives you a ridiculous amount of freedom in how you build your character. Want a stealthy rogue, a powerful wizard, a heavily armored warrior, or some completely weird combination that probably shouldn't work but somehow does? Go for it. Combat leans heavily into strategy. Positioning matters, spell timing matters, your party setup matters, and companions aren't just extra bodies following you around. They have personalities, opinions, and relationships that react to your decisions. Make the wrong choices, and some companions might permanently turn against you. Yeah, visually, it definitely shows its age now, but the amount of depth here is still insane. Dragon Age Inquisition. Dragon Age Inquisition makes you feel like more than just another hero with a sword. You're building an entire organization. You're closing giant rifts, tearing reality apart, negotiating with powerful factions, recruiting allies, and deciding who lives, who dies, and who stands with you. Combat gives you options too. You can play it like a fast-paced action RPG, jumping directly into the fight, or switch into tactical mode, and basically pause the battlefield to plan everything like a chess match. Then there are the companions, and honestly, this is where the game becomes hard to put down. Every character has their own goals, opinions, and personalities. Some become your closest friends, some absolutely hate your decisions. And that moment when your tiny camp evolves into Skyhold, yeah, if you've played it, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've never played Mass Effect before, here's the easiest way to explain it. Imagine playing through an entire sci-fi TV series where you decide who survives, who dies, who becomes your friend, and who absolutely hates your guts. And getting all 3 games in one package makes Commander Shepard's journey feel like one huge adventure from start to finish. The first game builds the universe, the second game gives you one of the greatest companion lineups in gaming history, and the third game brings everything together. The coolest part, your choices actually follow you across all 3 games. Save somebody in one game, and that decision might come back 30 hours later. Combat also evolves throughout the series. It starts as more tactical cover-based shooting and slowly becomes faster and more action-focused. But honestly, most people stay for the crew. Garrus, Tali, Liara, these characters stop feeling like NPCs and start feeling like teammates you've known for years. Kingdoms of Amalur is one of gaming's biggest "how did nobody talk about this" moments. Back in 2012, it got buried under studio problems, and a lot of people completely missed it. But Re-Reckoning finally gave this game another shot. The combat is honestly where this game hooks people. Unlike slower RPGs, combat here is super fast and satisfying. You're dodging attacks, chaining together sword combos, launching enemies into the air, then following it up with magic explosions like you're playing an action game. And the build system gives you ridiculous freedom. Want to mix giant weapons with stealth skills and magic? Sure. Want to become a full-on spell machine? Go ahead. The Destiny system lets you experiment without locking you into one class forever. The world also has way more lore than people give it credit credit for. This game feels like discovering a hidden RPG treasure chest years later. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. No dragons, no giant monsters, no magic spells, just you, a sword, and medieval life absolutely beating you up. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 doubles down on realism, and that's what makes it so different. You play as Henry, and you don't start as some legendary hero. You're basically just a regular guy trying to survive. Combat isn't about pressing one button over and over. You actually need to learn timing, directional attacks, blocks, counters, and positioning. At first, you'll probably lose fights against people you thought looked weak, but slowly mastering the system feels insanely rewarding, and the world itself feels alive. NPCs wake up, go to work, eat, sleep, react to crimes, and continue their lives whether you're there or not. Quests usually have multiple solutions too, which means you can talk your way through situations, sneak around, or create total chaos if you want. The Outer Worlds 2. Obsidian basically looked at open-world RPGs and said, okay, what if every decision actually mattered? Outer Worlds 2 takes everything from the first game and pushes it further. Gameplay gives you tons of ways to shape your character. You can become a smooth-talking manipulator, a science genius, a heavy weapons maniac, or honestly something completely ridiculous in between. Dialogue choices aren't there just for decoration either. Your decisions can change politics, economies, and how entire groups react to you. The humor also deserves credit, because the game never takes itself too seriously. 1 minute you're laughing at some absurd corporate nonsense, and 5 minutes later you're making a decision that actually feels difficult. That balance is surprisingly hard to pull off, but Obsidian usually nails it. Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic. Even after all these years, a lot of people still say KOTOR has the greatest Star Wars story ever made. And honestly, they might be right. Set thousands of years before the movies, you're thrown into a massive conflict between Jedi and Sith, and the game lets you decide exactly what kind of person you become. The gameplay uses a D&D-style combat system where timing, abilities, and strategy matter more than just mashing buttons. You customize lightsabers, unlock force powers, and slowly build your character into either a hero or somebody who makes very questionable life choices. And then there's HK-47. If you've played KOTOR, you already know why people still love this character. The graphics definitely show their age now, but once the story grabs you, you honestly stop caring pretty quickly. This isn't just a great Star Wars game. The tagline alone says everything. What can change the nature of a man? That question was asked in 1999, and RPG storytelling never really recovered. You play as the Nameless One, an immortal who can't die, trying to figure out who he is and why that even matters. Sigil, the City of Doors, is a strange, geometric chaos filled with factions, ideologies, and versions of reality that constantly challenge your identity. Combat exists, but it's not the point. The real game is conversation, memory, and choice. The writing is still considered one of the greatest achievements in RPG history, not because it's flashy, but because it treats dialogue like the main gameplay system. The enhanced edition makes it far more accessible today, but the soul of it hasn't changed at all. Baldur's Gate 3 didn't just raise the bar, it basically rebuilt it from scratch. Larian Studios took Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition rules and turned them into one of the most detailed and reactive RPG systems ever made. Even the first camp scenes show more character depth than entire companion rosters in other games. Your choices genuinely matter, not just in small ways but across entire story branches, relationships, and endings. No two playthroughs feel the same. Combat is tactical, layered, and creative, using height, surfaces, and environment interactions in ways most RPGs never attempt. And if you go co-op with up to 4 players, the whole experience becomes something completely different. With around 100 hours of content, nothing feels wasted. Every moment has weight. Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous. If Baldur's Gate 3 made you think, I want something even deeper, this is where you go next. Owlcat Games took CRPG complexity to another level, with systems that feel almost overwhelming at first, and that's exactly the point. There are 23 base classes, dozens of subclasses, and a mythic system that lets you ascend into literal angelic or demonic power. The result is one of the most flexible and theory-heavy RPG build systems ever created. The story scale is massive, the choices matter constantly, and the game supports both turn-based and real-time combat. It can feel intimidating at first, but once it clicks, it becomes hard to go back to simpler RPGs. This is CRPG depth at its most extreme and most rewarding.